Hi. You know what I am? Say it. A Jew.
Sheesh, that was intense.
What am I going to do?
No idea.
Got it! I will
Burn down
negotiate.
the house and blame Winston Churchill. Or negotiate.
For part of my 2019 catch-up, but also because it was an Oscar nominee for this past year for Best Picture, Jojo Rabbit is directed by Taika Waititi, the director of films like What We Do in the Shadows, The Hunt for the Wilder People, and more recently, other than Jojo Rabbit, Thor Ragnarok. And this film follows a young boy who is part of the Hitler Youth in the later days of the Second World War. And he's such a fanatic that his imaginary friend is Adolf Hitler himself. During the film, Jojo slowly begins to question his beliefs when he discovers a Jewish girl that's hiding inside of his house. As many of you probably already know or remember, whichever one, this film actually did make my top 10 of last year, my top 10 favorites of last year. So from that you can already tell that I love this movie, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the disclaimer, but I will add one small thing to it. I will be touching on some spoilers in this video, and that's because a couple of things pertain to some of the criticisms and also the positives that I have for the movie, so I do need to touch on them a little bit. So if you haven't seen Jojo Rabbit yet, and you still want to, just put this video in your watch later list, and then just come back to it once you've actually seen the film. Okay, now for our regularly scheduled programming. Before I get into my thoughts on the film, I want to throw out my normal disclaimer for those of the uninitiated. The way that I convey my thoughts is I do a pro and con list. It helps me to best catalog the good and the bad, in my opinion, and while I try to keep the sections separate, if I can make a pro and con work off of each other, or if they're intrinsically tied together, then I will definitely take advantage of that. Anyway, there's your disclaimer. Let's go ahead and get into my review of Jojo Rabbit. So my big issue with the film is part of the narrative, a narrative that I otherwise love, but there are parts of it that, one, don't work, or two, just don't make any sense. It takes a while. For instance, it takes a while for our main character to really begin to look at this Jewish girl as another fellow human being, and once he does, most of the development of that part of the relationship is sped through in a sort of montage, and I wish that we had at least gotten to see a bit more of the in-between there, and this is where I start to get into the slight spoiler territory, but I have to throw this out there too. The shoe scene is one of the best, most heart-wrenching reveals I've ever seen. I think this will go down as a very iconic scene and probably the most memorable scene in the entire movie. But I wanted to make this pro where it was just for a couple of seconds, and I would just say something along the lines of the shoe scene, and then it would be silent for a few seconds before it just cut to the next point. But while preparing for this video, I realized that I had an issue with the film that came not because of the scene, or actually, yeah, the only reason I had it was because this scene existed. So, again, spoilers for this next one. So after Jojo's mom dies, it's just him and Elsa, the Jewish girl, and as they do the montage that I mentioned earlier, it goes through about 2 seasons of the year, including winter, and they stress at least once beforehand, and maybe even after the fact, that they didn't know what they were going to do about food, and yet nothing is really given to explain how they got through, at least for the winter portion. So, I don't know, that was something that kind of bugged me for like 10 minutes, and then the film started like picking up again, but it's just something that was never explained. Anyway, there's my grievance. Now it's time for me to praise the script. This is set up as an anti-hate satire, and I know that for a lot of people, when it was announced that this film was going into production, they kind of just cringed at the idea that the film is centered around a little boy who worships Hitler so much that Hitler is his imaginary friend. But this obviously is not the focus of the script, despite what the early parts of the marketing campaign would suggest, or would have you believe. But really, the theme of this film centers around humanity and how we can learn to humanize those around us, and how we should look into our biases and our prejudices and really think about where they come from. And I saw it kind of as a rallying cry to question things, question viewpoints, and things that aren't widely, or at least by the majority, considered to be fact. And I really connected with this story with the way that it was told, especially after a rewatch, since I've been watching a lot of the YouTube channel Dear Mr. Atheist, which hopefully you guys can tell that it's a joke made in channel name form. But anyway, I'm getting a little off topic. Point is, that channel focuses a lot on those kind of ideas. That's why I was drawn to it in the first place, and why I enjoyed Jojo Rabbit so much. The themes tackled in the film are just as important today as it would have been during when the film was set. And we need these kind of messages in our world right now, a world where fanaticism and extremism is becoming more and more popular by the day, whether it's in politics, religion, or damn near everything else. Hell, even the Star Wars fandom. I just now realized I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt right when I made that comment. And the film does walk that fine line of the fact that it is a comedy, and the source material revolves around the bloodiest conflict in history when you can... I hate my lights. Shit. Around the bloodiest conflict in history when you consider that not only was there the war, but there was also the Holocaust, and the fine line is towed extremely well. And it definitely helps that, you know, like the racist white people in Mel Brooks's Blazing Saddles, the Nazis in this movie are showcased as idiots. Well, more buffoons than anything else, but some of them are definitely a lot lower on the intelligence scale. And, what is it? And Waititi knows how to... I swear I need to get that fixed. Waititi knows how to balance the comedic with the serious, much darker and even haunting moments. Again, the shoe scene. Roman Griffin Davis gives a great debut performance as Jojo, but I do have to say, in my opinion, he was at least slightly outdone by his by a few of his co-stars, and just to name a couple, ScarJo and Thomasin McKenzie. I was especially happy to see Thomasin McKenzie as Elsa. I loved McKenzie ever since my wife introduced me to an indie film that she did with Ben Foster back in 2017 called Leave No Trace, which I recommend to everyone. It's on Amazon Prime. And I would say that she's even better in Jojo Rabbit than she was in Leave No Trace. And many of us were annoyed that she was snubbed at many award shows, including the Oscars. And Scarlett Johansson gives one of two Oscar-nominated performances from this year, and one of them being in Jojo Rabbit as Jojo's mother. A simple role, yet a very complex one. And what sells you on her character is not only the ScarJo's performance, but also the dialogue as well. She's just one of those mothers who, you know, you want to have, who acts like a mother, but also that goofy, fun-loving best friend. And playing a role that probably no one else wanted to even play. I cannot confirm that or even properly hypothesize that, but whatever. We have the director of the film, Taika Waititi, playing the imaginative version of Der Fuhrer, Adolf Hitler. It's a ridiculous take on one of the most, if not the most hated man in history, but it's a suitable take nonetheless, because it is clearly the performance that someone is giving to mock a certain person. And because it's basically a one-joke scenario coming from the fact that Adolf is just Jojo's learned mindset personified, before the joke can actually become stale, the story just moves on to other things, only bringing back Adolf in small bursts or when it makes the most sense for Jojo to have some kind of inner turmoil with the familiar rather than the truth. And I thought that they tackled all of that very well. And because I've already praised the entire main cast, I should go ahead and start praising the more supporting cast. Sam Rockwell is great as ever as this SS officer who is friendly with Jojo. Stephen Merchant shines in a scene that is all at once clever, hilarious, and terrifying at the same time while he plays this Gestapo agent. And even Rebel Wilson is great as a Nazi who falls more under the idiot category that I mentioned earlier. But I was especially surprised at Wilson because this was the first role of hers that I've seen personally where she didn't play the same pitch-perfect-like character yet again. And honestly, there were a few times where I thought that she was going to be that, especially because her character is an idiot in this movie. In the end, the story of Jojo Rabbit is just as much comedy as it is tragedy, and it finds a way for the two tones to coexist together throughout, even when one is way more apparent than the other one is in the moment. And the result is a cleverly written World War II film with great acting and an important message that everyone should ponder on. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, actually, I forgot one thing. Obviously I recommend this movie. This was a pick for Best Picture that was actually good. Okay, I forgot about that part. Sorry. Normal stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and if you haven't already done it, and please hit the like button on the video. It helps with the recommendations, and also it helps narrow down the kind of videos that you want to see from the channel and even from other channels. But okay, I just went off on a rant there. I wasn't even thinking, but anyway, all of that's true. But yeah, so as always, farewell until the next video, all of you casual moviegoers and movie fans alike, and keep on being awesome.